Hello YouTube. In this video I'm going to describe how I use the System 3 EndRot system to repair a rotted wooden beam. System 3 has a nice video that I used as inspiration for this repair. I'll link to their video in the description below. The project is a large beam that's main support for a pergola, on the exterior of our patio. The house is in the coastal area of Southern California, and it's susceptible to drywood termites, high heat, high humidity, and salt spray. The combination of these things has really taken a toll on this beam. An active termite infestation was treated a few years ago, but I never got around to resealing the beam to preserve the rest of the wood. And I think moisture seeped into the termite tunnels, and then wood rot fungus took over to do the rest of the damage. In this next picture, you can see how bad things can get if this rot and termite damage is left untreated. So this is the kind of thing we're trying to avoid. Before deciding to repair the beam, I looked into what it would cost to replace the beam completely. I found some replacement timber online. It was running around $30 a linear foot, and that comes out to about $720 just for the beam, and then I'd have to pay delivery and installation on top of that. So based on the amount and severity of the rot I could see, I decided to go ahead and try the repair before going for a full replacement. One of my neighbors recommended the EndRot system based on some termite damage he had repaired on his property. His repairs seem to be holding up well, so I decided to give it a try. When I got into actually removing and clearing out the rotted wood, I discovered there was an area of damage that was much more severe than I had anticipated. That was going to be, so all I could do was continue to remove the rotted wood and see where that took us. I continued to remove the damaged wood until I finally got down to some solid undamaged wood, and ended up having quite a large void in the beam. Since this beam isn't structural and the remaining wood did seem pretty solid, I decided to continue with the repair versus replace scenario. So that's how we got going with the repair. I didn't have all of the right tools I needed for this scale of a job. I didn't expect it to be this damaged. So I was using a circular saw, a 7-inch circular saw, and a chisel for clearing out most of this rotted wood. For pulling out the rotted wood, it wasn't too bad to use the chisel, but this left somewhat of an uneven surface along the bottom of the cleaned out section. This beam also had a natural void in that portion where it looked like maybe there had been a sap tunnel before. So before proceeding with the main repair, I decided to fill that void with general purpose epoxy resin. So I got that from System 3 as well, and mixed and filled that void on the bottom of the repair area. I sort of just poured it in until it was level all the way across the bottom. Couldn't get it completely level based on all of the irregularities, but I certainly did fill in that sap void and got a nice solid repair there on the bottom. I'll let this cure up for about 24 hours before proceeding with the rest of the repair. To fill out the remainder of the open area of the void, I decided to use 2x8 lumber. I picked this up at Home Depot. I didn't go with treated wood for a few reasons. The treated wood was significantly heavier, and I didn't want to add any more weight in this sort of weakened section of the beam. And number two, I was planning to treat the wood anyway with a borate solution. So that's another part of the System 3 EndRot system, is the borate treatment to preserve the wood. So I decided to just go with it normal lumber. The Home Depot lumber ended up being about 3/8 of an inch too wide, so I used a circular saw to just trim off the excess. I built up each layer of the repair by stacking the cut 2x8s to fill the void, and used 6 3¼ inch stainless steel decking screws to screw each piece into the beam and into the previous layers of the repair to kind of give it rigidity. You're going to notice in the pictures the repair was not completely level. There's a number of reasons why this was. I didn't want to take out any more of the good wood than I had to, because I was getting worried that it wasn't going to be strong enough. So wherever the wood was strong enough, I kind of left it in there. And I didn't have all the proper tools to make perfectly level cuts. I was just using a circular saw and a chisel. So the end result is that the repair surface was uneven and slightly unlevel. So like I said, that unevenness was addressed mostly when I poured the epoxy into that bottom area. But the unleveled aspect of it meant that I could only really stack in 3 layers of the 2x8s before I had to stop, or I would have built over the top. So I was left with sort of a triangular void along the top surface of the beam. So I decided to fill this triangular void and all of the other voids around the repair with the System 3 sculpt wood putty. I ordered 2 gallons of that putty and used just about all of it just on this section of the repair. The putty is really easy to work with. It was easily pressed into all of the voids around the repair. I first filled in the voids around the sides and bottom of the repair, and next, based on System 3's advanced beam repair video, which I'll link below, I added some plywood forms covered with wax paper along the sides, or rather the front and the back of the repair, and this made a nice trough along the top that I could pack putty into and fill that top void. I completely filled the void and left it slightly convex along the top to prevent water from sitting on the repair, and this would keep it dry in the future. So I let this cure an additional 24 hours before continuing.
Many minutes later.
And after the putty cured, I removed the plywood forms and sanded down some of the rough edges with an orbital sander. The next thing I wanted to do was fill in around the front face of the 2x8 repair with the System 3 sculpt wood paste. This would hopefully conceal the fact that I had repaired this with stacked lumber by leaving the front face completely smooth where the repair was. The sculpt wood paste is noticeably more difficult to work with than the putty. It's much more sticky and looser than the putty. It wants to run a little bit, as it should be. It should be a little bit more runny than the putty. But it presents problems for making larger vertical applications like I was trying to do. Maybe I should have tried to do it in multiple passes instead of just in one pass. But ultimately I got it on using a flexible plastic applicator, similar to what they used in the System 3 video, and it worked out quite well. I let the paste stay on there and cure for 24 hours.
One eternity later.
And after it had cured, I came back and then sanded down all of the rough edges front and back with an orbital sander with fine grit sandpaper. The cured paste and the putty are really easy to sand, and I was able to make pretty quick work of sanding the front and the back of the repair with that orbital sander. Finally, I chose the Sherwin-Williams Resilience brand paint to finish the ceiling. I painted the beam first and then painted the smaller cross beams that had been removed. Wanted to do this before reinstalling them. This gave me a good 360 degrees of paint coverage on the main beam and the cross beams. That's about it. I still need to reinstall the smaller beams, but I don't expect any difficulty there. I need to cut a small notch on the top of the repaired area, but since the wood putty acts very much like wood, those cuts, the small cuts, should be a non-issue. Very happy with the finished product. This being the first time I've tackled a project like this, I feel like I learned a lot. And because of this, I may have done things a little differently next time. I probably should have put one more coat of paste on the front surface of the repair. Some of the repair is still visible along the front side, from the right angle and the right light. So I might have added one more coat of that. I might have spent a little more time making sure the base of the repair was completely level. This would help minimize the use of putty along the top surface. And a friend of mine suggested I might put large bolts through the top of the repair down and have a steel plate on the bottom, providing rigidity into the other parts of the beam. But I don't think that was necessary on this repair, since so much of the wood was it was still viable and the structural integrity was good. So wasn't any point in adding that extra support. Like I said, overall, I'm very happy with the end result and the System 3 EndRot system. I don't think this beam is going to give us any trouble for quite a while.